Hey guys, Project Zodiac here. I'm back with another video, and I'm not going to go too much into an intro with this. I'm just going to go straight into the essay itself because I have a lot to talk about. So the Xeno series focuses on so many themes, ideologies, and religious concepts that it can be a bit overwhelming for some people. But honestly, I love this. I love seeing the themes and understanding everything I can about it. These themes are honestly the same across all of the Xeno games, and even though the Xenoblade games are published by Nintendo, they're still there. It does not mean that these concepts were taken out. They are fully present, though just slightly altered in some cases. But with Xenoblade 3 finally out for a few months, and after finally beating it not too long ago, I was amazed by the new concepts and themes on it. And while a lot of them we've seen before, there's also been a lot that was brand new, and I've just been so excited to talk about. So this is going to be the essay I've been most excited to write. And all of those previous essays I wrote and talked about, they were very important to this particular one. Think of them as foreshadows for the topics we'll be talking about here. This essay is going to be broken up into 6 categories, each with main points. There's going to be a lot of topics in each category, but it's not everything the game talks about, but there is a lot. And keep in mind that some of these topics I'll talk about, I will kind of rush over them compared to some other topics. The reason for that is because there is just too many topics in this video, and I want to focus on some bigger ones and more complex ones over some of the smaller ones. But each and every one of these topics will be given an example of what I'm trying to talk about. Now keep in mind, some of you might not agree with the category placement where I put some of these topics, but they are there for many reasons. So also please understand that not all of the concepts talked about here you will agree with, as some of it all comes down to your beliefs, culture, and understanding. And also please keep an open mind about these concepts and themes, and also please be respectful to one another who might be seeing things differently than you. So this essay will be focused only on Xenoblade 3. I will be making some mentions to some other Xeno games every now and then, but it's specifically for Xenoblade 3. So there's going to be spoilers for every single game. You should just expect that, basically. But it's going to be having spoilers specifically for Xenoblade 3, like literally the entire thing for Xenoblade 3. This includes the DLC pack, but only up to the story that is included in Wave 2, because that's when I just finished writing this, right after I played the Xeno DLC story. So with all that said, let's just get into this. Again, this is going to be a very long video, as you guys can see. So I just have a lot to talk about. So starting right away, the first category we will be looking at is the scientific concepts that the game talks about and shows. This will probably be the fastest out of all 6 concepts, as there's not really a lot to analyze here. So first, we have the concepts of genetic modification, as we see that a lot of the races shown in the game are hybrids from many different races. This would be why the High Entias have smaller wings and the Urians have less scales. We also have the concepts of body modifications, where we see that all of the people of Ionios have their irises, meaning that their bodies are all modified at some point at the start of Ionios, and this becomes kind of part of their genetics. We also have the concept of cloning, where all of the soldiers are clones, being basically reborn whenever they die. Upon being brought back to life, they're then put into that 10-year cycle again and branded to always remind them how long they have to live. They are then also put under the flame clock system, which brainwashes them. Now, they don't really know that they're clones, but they have a vague memory of being born. The flame clock system is implemented for reasons we will talk about later on in this essay, but for this category, we can just say that it's used to brainwash and control the soldiers. So when they are in the flame clock system, they have no sexual desires or awareness. Take Lance, Noah, showering with Uni at the very start of the game as an example. There's nothing happening there. They're all casual about it, as if it doesn't bother them or excite them or make them look away or anything. But when they leave the flaming clock system, we can see that all of the boys start acting strange when they are changing clothes. During that scene, they did not change in front of the girls because the boys ended up feeling basically sexual tensions, and they get shy with the girls saying that they are, let's just say, charged up, and they themselves don't even know what's going on with them, because again, they've been brainwashed their entire lives. But we'll talk more about this a little bit later on as well. Also, they don't even notice each other's different races. Basically, they don't even notice the world around them, not even the animals growing up. So they only notice things for the most part only if it is the enemy that they're made to kill, kind of like a hive mind. They don't really have their own individuality, or well, they have very little of it, and we'll talk about that later on. But to give an example, they're even punished if they wear anything that is not their actual uniforms. So they don't even know how to farm, as their own food items are always sent to them. And I mean, I can just go on and on with so many examples about the brainwashing. The point is, they're just brainwashed from the moment that they are born. And another concept is that they all live kind of like in a simulation. Another thing is that their essence is basically being projected out into the world via a supercomputer that is Origin, where all of their DNA is located. And their essence is as well located within Origin. So they live in a matrix-like way except in the physical world, and their world is joined by two different universes that were originally one, joining back together. In the end, the game focuses in a subtle way the multidimensional theory, though when you get closer towards the last chapter and then the rest of the last chapter, they focus on it way more and in big ways. This theory basically says that the dimension we live in is one of many. In Xenoblade 3's case, it was one dimension that got split into two, and then they began joining together again to be one. Now, the concept of things being one and joining together will come up again later on in a different way. But a big way the game shows this is with the concept of the anima and animus, which basically means that every male has an inner female side while every female has an inner male side. This is shown to us with how the team breaks the traditional gender norms by showing us traits the opposite gender is normally associated with in our society. An example being of how Noah is not afraid to cry and show his emotions in front of others, while Mio does not do so very often, or how Lance is very self-conscious and Senna likes to work out a lot. These are just a few examples of the anima and animus concept in the game. There's so much more other examples. Another bigger psychology concept is the shadow and the id. The shadow is basically the darker part of you, the suppressed negative side you have. And the id is the unconscious primitive instinct we have for things such as lust, power, and greed, and the impulses that make us want to go and do those things. Both the shadow and id is represented by N in Xenoblade 3. Then we have the superego and the ego and the self. The superego is basically our moral standards that we learn from the people around us, and it becomes kind of what guides us in making our decisions. While the ego is set between the superego and the id. It kind of looks at what the ego wants and tries to bring that to reality, but by staying true to the standards of the superego's morals. The self is basically the joining of both the consciousness and the unconsciousness of a person and representing that person as a whole. These three concepts would be represented as Noah in Xenoblade 3, as both N and Noah are the same person, and the self can also be seen as the Ouroboros forms that the team has. Another big topic the game touches on is the concept of the complex, which basically means that there is something in the person's life that makes them have their thoughts and emotions. All of the characters in the games has this, but a good example is Jorn, as his complex is people betraying him in his past lives. That made him, as Console J, go insane, thinking his friends has the strength to make it in their world, but he does not. This made him have jealousy towards them and not even realize he was always important to them in his life. This also touches on the extroversion and introversion, where characters all share this, and it is the traits that show when one is expressing themselves to the world, compared to how they are expressing themselves to themselves. A big example is Lance and Senna. They both show themselves as extroverts, being loud and always talking and very social, but really they're both introverts with a lot of self-doubts. All of the characters in the game also follow Jung's 12 main archetypes, which are basically characteristics that make a character. I won't really be going into explaining them all, as that's just going to make this essay way longer than it is, but I do recommend looking them up so that you get a better understanding of them. But I will also at least say, here is who I think fits in each of the 12 archetypes. Senna is the innocent, Lance is the everyman, Noah is the hero, Mio is the caregiver, Tyon is the explorer, Uni is the rebel, Annie is the lover, Chris is the artist, Joran is the jester, Guernica is the sage, M is the magician, and Z is the ruler. The game also talks a lot about human instincts. I mean, Zed even goes on a huge speech about it, saying all humans fall for power, greed, jealousy, and so on. This will be talked about again later on, but because of this, there's a huge power corruption in the world of Ionios. The consoles are the government in a way and manipulate everything behind the scenes just to feed their power. But not all of them become what they are just for power. They all have their own emotions and reasons. The game also focuses a lot on what it means to have emotions. We see abandonment issues and selfishness from N, where everything he did was for himself. Then we see loneliness from M, where she's not able to be with the N that she loved. And then we see like depression from Sana and Lance for many different reasons, and all of the characters really express their emotions really well. But one of the biggest psychological themes and concepts the game touches on is the inner growth. All the characters have their own issues and they all face things that make them grow and change their views. And even though they all have their own journeys, they see that they're not alone. This is shown the most with each of the Ouroboros pairs, where each one is growing by themselves with the help of their partner. This leads us to the sociology section of the essay. The way the characters show each other kindness and support is a big factor of the game. We see how far the team goes to help total strangers and people who were once their enemies. A big example would be Guernica using the Ouroboros stone to free a small group of total strangers from the flame clock. But the game also focuses a lot on human corruption, the violence that humans have and bring. Their corruption is even what feeds Mobius, and it's what keeps their world going. They are made to kill each other over and over and betray one another because it is part of their instinct and the easiest way for the established government to actually get power and live long lives. This is another theme and concept of the game that it touches on: governmental lies and dictatorship. The consoles is basically the world of Ionios government, like I mentioned earlier, and they're a government that brainwashes the people and feeds off of them. They put the world in a war and no one realizes the two sides share the same consoles, and for them, the consoles, it's just a game. The consoles even lie to them about reaching gold status, and at the end, those that do reach that status are just killed by their console. This is another example of the theme the game touches on, which is, as I just mentioned, a dictatorship and fascism. In a way, the government in Ionios, the way it's set, it's both, with Zed as the dictator and the consoles free to do as they please. And with that said, the way the consoles trap the people of Ionios to do their bidding is also an example of slavery, which is something that the game touches on as well, where all of those soldiers are made to be slaves, puppets that are controlled against their wills by the consoles. But this kind of leads into so many other topics that kind of blend together, such as war, rebellion, and death. These concepts are some of the biggest in the game. The War of Ionios is made by the console, an endless war full of death and suffering, and on the other side, you have rebellion, where it's people fighting back against the people that rule their world, which these rebels would then be the people of the city. And even though death is an important concept in the game, the one that is bigger than that is life. Life is a central theme of the game. We see the party realize what life is, the good, the bad, the sad, the happy, all of it. They see that life has many stages. They see that people age and die, that people fall in love and have a family. They come to learn about all of these things and how they all connect, how everyone has a past and their future can always be achieved, how rivalries are strong, and how everyone has a story. In fact, one of the biggest themes of the game is also letting go of the past, being in the moment but looking and moving towards the future. This is one of the biggest arcs and themes of the game, as we see it reflect in almost everyone, and it is most symbolized with Noah tossing Lucky 7 out into the ocean when the worlds are about to merge. Through their journey, they see that life is something that people take for granted so often, and a lot of times people don't even understand life and its beauty. The game uses life as a symbol to show how special we all are and how unique we all are, and with that, it leads into the next big theme that the game talks about, and that is individualism. I talked about that a bit earlier, how the console brainwashed the people of Ionios and that they have very little individualism left. That is what this point is about. One of the biggest themes in this game is finding your own individuality and being yourself. We see that with the main party all the time, but I want to give the example of Jorn. Even though he was under the flame clock system, part of his individuality was still coming through. He would make wooden charms of him and his friends, and it would show how he wanted himself to look one day. This individuality is something that people take for granted. He was trying to show the world that he likes to think about his friends and that he has hopes from himself. But it goes beyond that. It shows that he loves to carve things, that he has a talent for carpentry, and that he is an artist in his own way. Another example is with Valdi and his love for the machines. Even when he is under the flame clock system, he still loves machines. This rather shows that even if you are brainwashing someone, no matter what you do, their individuality will seep through, even if it is a little bit. And many times we try to brainwash ourselves. Another example with that, and also mixing that in with individuality, is with Shania. Gondor has always told her her skill is not fighting, and even though she was rude about it, she always did just care about her friend. Shania had her skills with painting, just like Joran with his wood carving, but Shania would not want to embrace her skills. She would not let herself be her own individual, so she would work to be what others wanted her to be instead, which is a soldier. And sadly, that's another thing this game talks about. The game focuses a lot on a persona, the real you, and the mask that you wear to be the fake you. Shania and Joran are both perfect examples of this. And sadly, it's a thing that so many people in the real world do. They don't know how to be themselves, so they put on a mask. Many times they're forced to wear a mask for many reasons, and it eats them inside because they don't know who they are. And a lot of times they do know who they are, but they can't be themselves. And they only do that just so that they could protect themselves from the bad places they're in or the bad people around them. In Shania's case, she was just a jerk in general, but she would put on the appearance of someone who is decent. She lied to the world on purpose, not because she had to, but because she wanted to, because she wanted to take power from people as she felt like everyone stepped on her. But maybe if she stayed true to herself and her own individualism, she would have found her peace, and maybe she would have even embraced her arts. This is another thing that the game focuses on, but it's done in a subtle way, and that's the power of art. Art is a big thing in this game, and we see it in many forms. We have music from the Offseers, we have wood carving from Jorn, we have paintings from Shania, and there's even books that get brought up in side quests and the importance of them and the written art. Art is an important thing in the game, and there are even 2 very specific quests that are even related to paintings. But the thing is, there is a power in art, and the consoles know this. That is one of the themes of the games, the power that art has on people. So much so that one of the consoles made one of the Colony Zero people toss out a painting with huge urgency because it was a reminder of something from the past, if I remember correctly, that the console did not want it to influence the world. This theme is reflective of the real world where art is used to move people, to send messages and to show emotions and expressions. And in many places, certain types of expressive art is or was forbidden because of the way art can move people. And it's one of the few things that unites people all over the world. And this global unification is another theme that the game touches on, uniting the world against Zed and uniting the colonies and factions together for a better world. With every colony you free, they are free of the flame clock, and you show them and you tell them about the world. And there are so many quests where the colonies begin to work together or send people to live in other colonies. This helps build a relationship with the world and how people see each other. This global unification is an important thing because it plays a big role at the end of the game with everyone fighting together against Mobius and Zed. And on top of that, it shows how people's different points of views help each other see things differently and grow together and share each other's cultures. And culture itself is another big theme. We have all of these different colonies with their own skills and techniques and their own unique ways to live. We have Colony 30 who is fully focused on machines, and then we have Colony Tau that are farmers. And then we have the Nopon Caravan and the city. Each one of these factions have their own culture, and we see that the party is very well mixed in with all of them. It also goes back to the individualism aspect bleeding out from the mind control as well, like we talked about earlier. This mixing with each other's cultures is a big thing in the game, and it is central to a lot of the side quests that the game has. And with the topic of culture present, we now reach the last 3 categories, And once again, please understand some of these topics on the rest of this essay will focus on things that are not for everyone. Some things might be strange for one person or their culture, but more understandable and slightly more accepted for another and their culture. Some of these topics might be controversial, or some might be things that are no longer seen as taboo by most cultures, but still is for others, or are maybe in the process of being made more open and less taboo in specific cultures. And there are topics that might not be fully accepted by all cultures depending on the situation. The last three categories will have a lot of things like this, especially this category and the final category. This particular category though is the taboo category, which has topics that many people might find as taboo in general, or depending on the situation that they are present. Taboo basically means that it is something that is prohibited or highly frowned upon by one's culture, society, or family, or even just oneself. Sometimes the acts themselves of these topics are not what is taboo, but simply talking about it or bringing it up can be seen as taboo for some. So I'm using the term taboo here to talk about the themes that Xenoblade 3 talks about that are not always publicly acceptable or understood, or that they're just in the process of not being taboo anymore. So please understand that even though some of these things might not be seen as taboo for you, or are things that are probably part of your lives or your culture, I do not mean to offend you or anyone by including these here or calling them taboo. I'm only doing this because it is the themes that the game talks about, and not every culture or group fully accepts these things in this particular category. So again, I ask all of you to be polite and respectful to one another, and now with this disclaimer out of the way, let's just get back into the essay. As I was saying, culture is a very big thing in Xenoblade 3 and the Xeno series as a whole. Since Xenogears, Takahashi has implemented so many complex themes and situations into the Xeno games that kind of reflect how complex our world is, and in Xenoblade 3 this is no different. Let's look at the next topic, which comes directly from the culture of the city. With the city being free of the flame clock and able to live their lives normally, they have romantic relationships. And looking at the affinity charts, we can see that some of the relationships kind of have age gaps. However, some of these are by big years. Let's take Gray and his wife as an example. Gray is 60 years old. I mean, he's not an old guy, but his wife isn't like 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 years younger or older than him. She's actually 30 years younger. There's a lot of side quests that actually bring this up, where they talk about the age difference and the age gap between the two of them. As I said, there's a lot of cases like this in this game. Another example is Monica and Jensen. Well, they're not really a couple, and we'll get to that as that's basically the next point. Anyway, they are about 11 years in age apart, with Monica being 33 and Jensen being 22. This is less shocking than the Gray and his wife situation though, but it's still somewhat a big age difference. So now, speaking of Monica and Jensen, as I said, this would lead us into our next point, in that they are in the same family. While they're not related by blood, they are still family, given that Monica's dead husband is actually Jensen's older brother, making Monica and Jensen siblings-in-law. Jensen loves Monica in a romantic way and even asked her to be with him when all of this is over. And she actually does keep thinking about this the rest of the game. Even though we're never really given an answer on what her decision is, it is very clear that she is thinking once the war is all over that she might be with him. Now, I want to say that this could be called incest as a topic name, but again, they're not really related by blood, so technically it's not, but it doesn't change the fact that they're still related and in the same family. So that might not sit well for some, especially given that Jensen's older brother is who was married to Monica. And if that wasn't really the case, if like it wasn't his older brother and if he wasn't married to Monica, I don't think it would be as controversial, so it might have been a little less controversial, but still, that's one of the themes that the game does talk about. And speaking of Monica and her dead husband, that leads into my next point, and that is related to teen pregnancy, given that Monica and her husband had Gondor when Monica was only 15 years old, and sadly her husband died 4 years later. So right there, it kind of talks about single parenting and how that can be complicated for some people as well. But we do know that Monica and her husband did get married at some point. And this is actually now me kind of going off of my notes because I just realized this and I should have added this. This is another topic that the game talks about, which is, as I just mentioned, single parenting, or parents who aren't very present. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit later as well with a different topic. But Monica had to raise Gondor on her own. And I mean, yeah, she had Guernica with her to help her, as Gondor's grandpa. But Monica was still off doing her own things because she's still very young and now she's in charge of the city as well. So not only was Monica a single mom, but Monica was also a mom that was not very, very present, because she had her job and her responsibilities. And that's another issue, or not another issue, but another theme and another topic, and one that a lot of people can relate to. But anyway, going back to my notes, from everything we see in the game, it doesn't really seem like anyone in the city is really bothered by the fact that Gondor and Monica are very close in age, and that Monica had her when she was a teenager, and any of the other points I just talked about in this particular category. So it really just seems like the city's not bothered by the age gaps or teen pregnancy or anything like that. And this just shows how the city's cultural acceptance is different than that of most of the societies in our world. We also see another big theme in the city, and that is family hardships and issues, as I was kind of talking about earlier. But I'm not going to be talking about what I just talked about earlier. I'm just going to be talking about what I wrote in my notes, which is a lot of people don't really like to talk about family issues, and doing so can even cause so many problems for the family. So we see this a lot with the houses of the cities and the troubles that many families have. An example is Romero and Julieta. They're two lovers from two different houses, and these two houses are also on different sides of how the city should be ruled. Julieta's dad refuses them getting married, and this kind of leads him to disowning his daughter. Another example is the family struggles for Shania. Her sister died, and her mother sees Shania as a disgrace and worthless, and that her painting skills is something pointless, while her dad sees her skills and praises her, but she does not want to notice that. She only focuses on the bad, and this whole family situation is kind of what makes her go more towards being fake and a jerk, and that kind of leads into our next topic as well. That next topic is suicide. Shania commits suicide after she's implemented into the flame clock system because she just wants to get away from the life she has, and so that she can be fighting and killing and having a chance to have a better life. She willingly decides to be a slave for Mobius, and that is our next theme, which I did mention earlier a little bit, and that's slavery. Everyone that is under the flame clock system are slaves. They are slaves that are made to murder, and that is also the next big thing, which is killing. Killing is a big focus on the game, and a perfect example other than the war setting is Dirk, who basically becomes Consul D. Dirk had gained a big reputation for killing the people that he loved, and can even be seen as a maniacal serial killer. He killed even his own people just because he loved killing, and then decapitated many of his victims and kept their heads as trophies. His whole focus is just to kill. He's a perfect example of the things that Zed tells the party about. He, Shania, N, and M, and a few other people also shows the themes of betrayal, where each of them has betrayed someone and even themselves for greed, power, lust, and so on. They also show a kind of racism towards people who are not Mobius in a way, which is a theme that is present in other Xenoblade games way more than it is here, but all Mobius still touch on the next theme as well, and that is the theme of cannibalism, or the topic of cannibalism. While it is not necessarily in the manner that it is shown in Xenoblade 1 or 2, where they actually kind of consume the flesh of others, here Mobius kind of consumes the life force of those that die. A big example is going back to what we talked about at the start of this essay, the gold rank colonies, and how those are just a lie. The Mobius that are in charge of that colony kills them all in order to feed on their spirits. And considering that the Mobius were human as well, so it's basically humans consuming the essence of another human just for power and immortality. A next smaller topic or thing that the game talks about is also related to drugs. Though it's not really present in Xenoblade 3 as it is in Xenoblade 1 and 2, and it's really only brought up with the DLC Wave 2 pack, which was again released a month before this essay was written. Drugs are basically used by the Nopon in that little story to basically drug up a monster so that the party can fight it. And it is even mentioned that the Nopon sell drugs secretly from Ino as she would have an issue with it. I kind of thought that was funny how they handled that whole scenario. Now, we have only 3 more topics in the taboo category, and the first one is a smaller one. And I did kind of mention it earlier, which is gender norms. But I want to expand on that a little bit more, as it goes more than just the anima and animus explanation that I gave earlier. While this example that I'm about to give is not one that is actually confirmed, it is something that is still being discussed, but does have some proof to it. But at the same time, this proof could change at any moment with confirmation from Monolith Soft or the people involved working in the game. The example I want to give is that the game might be showing us a non-binary character, and that would be Juniper. Again, this is not confirmed at the time of this essay, but the reason as to why Juniper might be non-binary would be because everyone refers to Juniper as they, them in the English text and other genders in other languages. And basically also due to some data mining stuff that people found. Even though this is one we cannot fully confirm that it's the case, it's still nice to think about that it is the case and further shows how Monolith Soft tries to show all sides of human life and give as many people as representations as they can in the Xeno series. And this kind of goes into the next topic as well, and we can also use Juniper for that as well, which would be interracial relationships. Juniper is a Gormari, and there is some kind of connection between Juniper and Xeon, who is a Hyantia. At least for me, there's some kind of romantic link between them that might grow, but let's go with a better, more concrete example, and that's with Kite and Juniper. Kite really likes Juniper, like a lot, and Kite is just a regular human. And honestly, we can even go even further with a better interracial couple, and that would be N and M, with N being human and M being Gormari. Both of them end up having a kid together. But I mean, we can even go further than that with this next example, which also leads us to our final topic for this taboo category. And while it's not really talked about, it is shown very clearly, and I do mean very clearly, and that would be polygamy, which is basically having more than one spouse. We see that very clearly at the end of Xenoblade 3 with Rex in the photograph that we see Nia looking at. Basically, it shows us that he got with Pyra, Mithra, and Nia, and he had kids with all 3 of them as well. Now, I just want to make this very clear, and this is also not in my notes, it's just more me saying it. I'm using the word polygamy here, but it could just be an open relationship or a different type of relationship along those lines, because we don't really know if Rex marries Pyra, Mithra, and Nia, or if he only marries Pyra, or if he only marries Mithra, or the 2 of them, and is in kind of like a open relationship. We don't know. I'm just assuming he gets married to all of them, so that's why I'm using that word. So again, I'm just using these words for very specific reasons. But let's just go on to the next category. Now, the next category is not very controversial, and honestly, it's more about some symbolisms that the game focuses on, and I will say that this is kind of like the second shortest section of this whole essay. The first symbolism is that the name of the world of Xenoblade 3, which is Aionios, is a Greek word that means eternal. In other words, it kind of represents how their world is stuck on eternal loop, basically. The next word I want to talk about is Mobius, which is basically the form that the consoles take. This word is many things, but the most common ones that I think kind of relates to Mobius is that Mobius is a facial paralysis that is also kind of very rare, and people who suffer with this kind of facial paralysis, it kind of means that they can't close their eyes or make facial expressions. And honestly, this is kind of in line with one of the many reasons the consoles wear masks, and also to show that some of them are not older than everyone else, but it's even more present when they become Mobius. Their faces are stiff and almost frozen, and they can only really move their mouths. Now, while this one might be a stretch, the next term of Mobius is kind of not. In Greek legend, there is a god that is called Mobius, or rather its actual name is Morpheus, which is a god of sleep and dreams and appears to humans in dreams with a human form, but has another form. This is basically what the Mobius are in Xenoblade 3. The world is in a dreamlike state, and these superpowered beings come to them in the shape of humans, but appears to those who are awake in a way as their true forms. The consoles are also a very big symbolism because they are actual consuls of each colony. The term consul means an official appointed by a government to live in a foreign city and protect and promote the government's citizens and interests there. The next concept we have is that of the Ouroboros, which many people have talked about a ton. Short version is it's a serpent eating its tail to represent infinity and the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth, which is another whole theme of the game. So we're not going to really get into too much details about that because again, so many people have already talked about this. So we also have the black fog, which we will touch on in the last category more, but it's kind of used to represent the mind and the unconscious fears. And it's also used to represent a trance-like state that Ionios is in, as many cultures around the world use smoke and fog from incense to help with meditating or sleeping or cleansing for all kinds of things. The black fog is kind of like that, and I actually wrote a whole other video essay on that as well, so definitely check that out. The link to that is going to be in the description along with all of the other Xenoblade videos that I've made, and it will be put in the order that you should be watching it. So now we have 3 more points here, and the next one is going to be Noah's name, which is representative of Noah from the Bible, who God chose to help bring humans to a new world and survive the flood, which is kind of similar to what happens in Xenoblade 3 with Noah being chosen to bring everyone to a new world after Zed corrupted it. Next theme will be origin, and origin kind of means the source of things, but here origin is the source of the world rebuilding, while it's also the source of everyone's spirits and consciousness. And within origin, we have the theater, which is the last topic on this category. The theater is used to represent, in a way, a spiritual domain where a higher power is watching over everything and is seen close or in or above or around where the origin of all things are. Now, with all of that out of the way, we finally get to the final category, and there's a lot to talk about here, as this game does focus a lot on the metaphysical and spiritual aspect of things. Going off from the previous theme, this new theme or new topic that we're going to be talking about is the upper and lower domain. The upper domain is where the spiritual world resides and watches over us. In a way, that can be seen as origin and the theater, but not really. And we'll kind of get to why not really at the last point. So we can't really talk too much about the upper domain at this particular moment, but what we can talk about is the lower domain, which is made by 2 separate parts. The real number domain, which is the physical world, and the imaginary number domain, which is the world from people's consciousness. These 2 formed together become the lower domain, and this is represented in the Xenoblade games through the 2 universes in Xenoblade 3, with the real number domain being that of the universe of Xenoblade 2, and the imaginary number domain is the universe of Xenoblade 1. This is also another essay I wrote about, so again, the videos that you guys should be watching, all of the previous videos I made, is going to be in the description in the order that I recommend you guys watch them. As some of those videos were kind of like multi-part videos, but I made like a part after another video, so again, it's all going to be in the order I recommend in the description below with the links. But going back to the essay, so the game also shows us how we are all connected through a concept called the Unus Mundus and the connected unconscious. The Unus Mundus basically means one world and says we all come from one source, as many religious scriptures also say, and it also explains all of our connections stem from that source. On top of all that, our current selves come also from our ancestors and their fears and their skills and their traits. It's all kind of buried in ourselves due to us being connected through the Unus Mundus concept, or basically the source. This connection and everything being buried within us is the connected unconscious. This is also seen when the party merges into their Ouroboros form, and we see that each pair is connected to each other and they can see each other's past and how they're feeling and what they're thinking. But it goes further into that, which is a point we will get to shortly after the next point. And the next point is going to be synchronicity, which is honestly a lot of things, but I won't really go into all of it. Let's just summarize it as basically being coincidences that do not make sense for it to be happening. An example from the game is while Noah is about to die, he is being shown his past and how it relates to Mio, but at the end, Mio appears and saves him. This is something we will definitely be touching on the last point as well. Now, going on again from the connected unconsciousness, we go into another theme or another topic of the game, which is reincarnation, which is basically the concept that we are reborn in new bodies many times until reaching the end. This is seen as one of the main themes of the game, with people hoping to one day reach homecoming so that they can reach the end of their suffering, but they're usually killed and reborn on a clone body before reaching their 10th year. Those that do reach homecoming do not come back. This also ties in to the connected unconscious, as people can actually remember events from their past lives, and that plays a whole role in making them who they are now. The next important theme is that the game touches on people's life force, as we talked about earlier, as their essences are fed to Mobius, as that's their fuel and their food, but their spirits are put back in a body and made to be reborn. This brings us to the concept of funerals, which is a ceremony to see off the dead, which the officers are in a way the ones that perform the ceremony with music, and the importance of seeing someone off is heavily talked about throughout the entire game. Now, this next topic is a bit unconnected to what I just talked about, and I'll be mixing the next topic along with a few other topics together as they kind of connect together in a big way. And this next topic and the topics that follow it is the endless now, which is a state of wanting to be in the moment. And then we also have the law of attraction, which is what you think you attract, and it's basically prayer, but it also touches on the negative side of things, like your negative thoughts as well. And then we have free will, which is we are free to do what we choose and think. And then there's also the topic about balance, which is harmony in all things. The game focuses a lot on these things that I just talked about. Aionios is the endless now, a moment where people want to live in forever, and it's a moment of life, but it is corrupted by people's fears, which brings forth Zed and the Mobius and the Black Fog, which they are the law of attraction, as people were praying that the worlds would not destroy them, and the answers to these prayers were heard and given to them in the form of origin. But their subconscious fears spoke loud as well, and because of that, it brought in the darkness of Aionios, which is Zed. Then they had their free wills taken away, but their free wills always kept creeping back out, which is what we talked about earlier with their individuality. And then they also ended up breaking free from that control and following their own paths in a way that balances things out to be the way it should be at the end of the game, with their own personas as well. Now we're almost done here. There's just a few more things I want to talk about. The next one is the symbolism for the number 7. First, the number 7 is used a lot in religious texts and numerology, and it is often seen as the meaning for fulfillment or peace and harmony. In the game, we have Lucky 7, which is Noah's sword, and it is the only thing that can save people from the flame clock system and bring peace to the world. It was made by 7 Nopons with 7 different materials, and it took 7 years to make. Lucky 7 is the definition of the meaning of the number 7, as we just explained, as it does bring peace, harmony, and fulfillment to the world. The number 7 is also shown as the 7 sins and the 7 virtues in the game, though they're not really called that. There are many characters that do fit these traits. Like I said with the 12 archetypes earlier, I won't be going into the details of what these 14 things that I'm about to talk about are. I'll just say who I think fits these traits, but I do recommend researching the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues so you can kind of get a better understanding of what I'm trying to talk about. For me, the 7 virtues, the people that fit that category is going to be Senna is chastity, Tyon is temperance, Noah is charity, Lans is diligence, M is patience, Guernica is kindness, and Mio is humility. However, Noah also symbolizes all 7 virtues as well. And we can kind of say that N symbolizes all of the 7 sins. But let's also see who else fits into the 7 sins, broken down instead of having one person symbolize all 7 sins. Console K can be seen as sloth, Console J can be seen as envy, Console D can be seen as gluttony, Console X can be seen as wrath, Console Y can be seen as pride, N can be seen as greed, and Z can be seen as lust. Again, I know some of these may not make any sense, like why would Z be lust? That sounds like N. If you actually research it, you'll understand that lust is not just sexual desire, it's other stuff, and just how like N is greed for other stuff as well. Again, it's not one particular meaning, it means a lot of different things. So definitely research these so you can kind of get a better understanding of why I think these characters represent these 7 sins and these 7 virtues. With all of that said, that leads me to the last theme for the last category. And it is one that I do not think a lot of people will agree on. And it is one that I will analyze the most. And that is going to be the theme of a higher power and a lower power and how they are present in our lives and in the world of Xenoblade as well. This is a topic that all Xeno games have talked about, but we won't really get into that here as I've already talked a lot about it in some of my other essays. But we will say this, in all of those other games, we never really saw the true higher power. But in Xenoblade 3, I believe we do see the true higher power, and that's what we will be analyzing here. But first, let's talk about the false higher powers. In Xenoblade 1 and 2, we have the higher powers in those games, but in a way they're false higher powers. In Xenoblade 1, Zanza was just a total false higher power, while the somewhat true higher power for Xenoblade 1 was Elvis, but Elvis was only somewhat the true higher power just due to being connected to the conduit and the Aegis and the universe splitting. So he was not the one true higher power of the entire Xenoblade universe. In Xenoblade 2, we had Klaus, who was also a false higher power, but given the ability to be the higher power of his planet by the one true higher power of the Xenoblade universe. We know this because he says he was a fool as a human and that becoming the architect was a punishment. He then says that his punishment was retribution from on high for the sin he committed and that he had to atone for his sin. He says that he thought that the only way possible to atone for his sin was in rebuilding his world. That leads to Rex commenting with a confused tone about something higher than Klaus, but Klaus does not comment on that any further. This shows that there was a higher power that was present for everything, and Klaus knew it when he became the architect. When the two worlds lost their false higher powers, the real nature of the universe came to set things right by bringing the two universes to be one. Though I do have to be clear that while I do personally feel like it was the false higher god presence and their powers that kept the universes from trying to go back to being one, and that the universes only began to go back to try and be one after the false higher powers left. Again, that's what I personally think. I do have to be clear that it is very, very possible that the universes just drifted apart to a certain point and then the nature of the universe just came in and started pulling them back together, even if the false higher powers did not leave. But either way, the two worlds did not know about the true higher power. They thought that their higher powers had left. So when it came time to build Origin, they thought that it wouldn't work, and years of fears manifested the lower power when the universes were about to merge. They manifested someone to come in and take a place of a higher power they thought was not present. Zed is this lower power. He is the opposite of the higher power given that the evil he does and his demonic nature and appearance. Many religious scripts even do talk about a lower power and things related to demons. And honestly, we can even look at Zed and see that he even goes on to turn his followers into demon-looking things and basically fears on fears and bad things. He also looks to take away things from the higher power and tries to rule over the world that was created. And he also recruits people with their sins in mind, offering them things so that they could be a part of him and do evil things. I have seen so many people say that Zed is the higher power of Ionios, but really he is not. He's not like Zanza or even Klaus. He's not made to represent a false higher power, he's made to represent a lower power and even get stronger off of the evil of people. And he is basically powered by people's fears in general. So so he keeps the constant flow of war going so that he keeps his power. Now, if he is aware of the true higher power, it's not very clear, but considering he comes from people's subconscious, again through the connected unconsciousness and the unus mundus, and they're all connected to the higher power because they all come from the source, it is very possible he does know about it. And all of this, for me, can be proven when Noah sees his past lives. And this is also where we meet the true higher power of the Xenoblade universe. Like I said, the theater can be seen as, in a way, the spiritual world or a connection to the upper domain while inside of Origin. But when N is about to kill Noah, we see Noah somewhere else, the real upper domain, where it is white, filled with fog, and he relives all of his memories there. There in this world, there is a hooded person, a kid, and he speaks to Noah. We can assume that the person under the hood is taking on the reflection of Kid Noah, telling him about his past, basically just due to his voice. But that is not Kid Noah, and that is not Noah just reliving his past lives. This person is guiding Noah through them and explaining things to him. Things like how he was selfish in most of his life, but with each reincarnation he began to change. And this is also another theme with reincarnation, how you change and you grow with the reincarnations as well. So this person then asks Noah a few questions, especially if he will pick the same path as N. And when this person's voice changes to be that of Mio, and its appearance also because of Mio, we're then taken back to the second before N decapitates Noah, and we see that Mio is using her body swapping ability that she gained from M and that Noah actually survives. So for me, a lot of people actually interpret this scene wrong. They assume it was Mio using her body swapping ability on both N and Noah to show Noah his past and test him, because we see her at the end of that scene in that void. But that's not what happened. Not really, at least. The person that N was talking to in that void, again, was the true higher power of the Xenoblade universe, but Mio was also present, but only at the end. So let's break down what really happened in this whole sequence. First, M dies, then N goes to kill Noah, and just before N's sword touches Noah's neck, Mio uses her ability to first send a pulse which we know that the others can feel. This makes N stop for a quick second to figure out what M is doing. Now, from what we see of M's ability, it is limited to only one person at a time, and we do know that she entered Noah due to the after pulse leaving Noah, not N. And right when she sends that pulse to jump into Noah, he is put in that mind space. But something is up with this place. Keep in mind, when M is talking to Mio and showing her their memories, the mind space is the way we've always seen it when someone is interlinked. So why does this mind space where Noah talks to a hooded person look unlike anything we've seen before in any of the games? Even the way that the memories are replayed are different than what we've seen in the past. On top of that, the memories Noah sees go further than what M was alive for. So how could Mio show him things that M was not present for? Though when M is showing Mio her memories, we do see two shots that Mio would not have been around for, but this could be seen as she was watching over Noah after homecoming in spirit form, or that the developers just decided to add a few extra shots since they would be using those memories later on anyway. So there's no way that this was Mio using the ability to talk to Noah the entire time. What happened is that Mio used her ability to jump into Noah. She did so to first alert N and stop him and tell Noah to walk with her, as in to let him know it is her, not M, so that he does not get confused. This is where it might get confusing, as metaphysics can be a little confusing as time does not really go the way we perceive it. So in the mental space, right before Mio appears in Noah's mind, but right after she uses her ability, the higher power of the universe kind of comes in and spoke with Noah in the upper domain or the spiritual world. That is the void that they were in. He was able to show Noah how he was in the past and explain everything to him and tested him, and he even shows Noah that he was there watching over everything and everyone and was also present when N made his deal with Zed. The higher power spoke with Noah in the form of his younger self, basically just for symbolic reasons, and then he put on a new face, one of Mio, to show him that he passed his test and that the higher power would be walking with Noah and that Noah would be able to walk with Mio together again as well. And right at this moment, is when Mio enters the mind space to tell him for them to walk together. Before anyone says it was Mio as young Noah the entire time, again, why would she do that? Why would she disguise herself as young Noah? There would be no reason for Mio to disguise herself, and there would be no way for her to see the things that Noah witnesses unless it was in the spiritual form after her homecoming, especially given the fact that the hooded figure is seen watching over the scene where N is talking with Zed in the theater. Plus, keep in mind, Zed even told N that he is very interested in N because N seems to be facing him all the time, and that he seems to be a factor in the world even after his own homecoming. So that means that there is someone there intervening, and Zed wants to stop that person. This would be the higher power that is intervening. And even after Zed got to N, the higher power made it so that Noah and Mio would still be split from their dark selves to have a chance against Zed and restore the universe to how it's supposed to be. This is a battle between the lower power and the higher power, with the higher power doing things with patience and while respecting people's free wills, and the lower power doing things by prying into the desires of people and to take away from the higher power. And this whole theme of a higher power against a lower power is present in many religious texts and in many legends around the world, and now we see it in the universe of Xenoblade as well, especially when it was already hinted at before in the past games. Again, many people won't really agree with this analysis of that scene, and that's fine, but for me it's very clear that that's what's going on, and that's how I will see it unless the developers straight out say it was Mio the entire time, and if they ever do, I will explain their explanation of that scene, but I will then still see it kind of as an analogy to what I just explained. Now, this essay was the longest out of all my Xenoblade essays so far. This is currently at 14 pages, and most of my essays have been between 5 and 6 pages long. So I hope this essay was worth it for you, given how long it currently is, and I just hope this shows you how well developed this game is. When the story DLC expansion is released next year, I'm thinking about doing a part 2 for this essay if I see any new themes or concepts in that story, but we will have to wait and see for that. But going back to this essay, I honestly have not really talked about everything that this game has in terms of themes and concepts. There's just so much present here, just as much as in the past games in this series. But these are some of the biggest ones that I have been very excited to talk about. So with all that said, I hope it's a little bit clearer now why my past essays were kind of important to this bigger one. And now that this is out of the way, it kind of just means that I'm now free to write my review for Xenoblade 3, as I have not been able to do that because I've been focusing on all of these other essays. And also just because now I don't need to bring up all of these topics in my review, and I could just write what I think about the game and what it means to me. So let me know what you thought about this analysis. Let me know if I missed anything that you think should have been in this. With all that said, I really hope you do enjoy this video, and I hope you guys rate and comment and subscribe, and again, if you're gonna be commenting, please be respectful. So with all that said, just again, I thank you guys for watching this video. Thank you guys so much for also watching my other videos related to Xenoblade. My next video for Xenoblade 3 is, like I said, my review, and it is going to be the last one I'm going to be doing for Xenoblade for a while. So I do hope you guys watch that, and I hope you guys also watch my other videos on my channel as well, because it's all related to media that are like music, movies, books, shows, video games. I'm still kind of building this channel, especially because I am very, very busy. I do work a lot, and I work on a lot of other projects as well. But still, I hope you guys do watch my future videos whenever those things are out as well. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.